Go there. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. I'm so very happy to see you all today. So many familiar faces, so many of our colleagues, so many of PPE students, present and former. Students who are not within the IPS and students that are within the IPS, students within our faculty, students that are from Faculty of Law as well, and students from Charles University, Batvishe as well. Welcome all. Thank you for being here. My name is Emilia Bogdanovic, and I am the president of the PPE Debate Union, and it is of the utmost pleasure today that I get to present this club to you. We are an organizing committee of 7 PPE second-year students, and we are committed to facilitating and fostering multi-style debates on a bi-weekly basis. So every even Wednesday here in the Ioannidis campus at 12:30 p.m., 12:30, we do multi-style debates ranging from Karl Popper to Lincoln Douglas to British parliamentary style debates. But our main mission really is to foster and facilitate the Grand Oxford style debates, what you have right here. And this has been coming into motion for a year now, and we're so happy to finally be able to host an event like this. And we are to hold 2 such events per academic semester. So this is the first one. The next one will probably happen mid-December. And now I will give the word to my wonderful colleagues and friends that are also second-year PPEs. I would just want to say a quick shout out to all the clubs we're working with. We're working with the Karlovian, which you'll hear about in a minute. We're working with the Politologický klub, the Czech political club, and we're working with the Debatný klub Univerzita Karlova, the Charles University debating club of the Faculty of Law. Thank you all. Thank you to our professors as well for the help. And thank you all for coming here. And I would say thank you to my wonderful colleagues, which I will now give the word to. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm going to make this short. We all know why this topic is very relevant right now. I don't think I really need to explain why tyranny and autocracy is a more modern topic than ever. I was inspired to this topic by the method of Tyrannenmord in Germany, which is a civil duty, and I thought it would be a good thing to have a debate like this and get your opinions in. Have in mind that there will be an open audience section where you get to interact, get to ask questions to the debating teams. So yeah, I'm not gonna say too much, but we all know why this is important, and it's gonna be interesting to see both sides represented today.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Medina Alazada. I'm one of the co-chairs for today, but in general, I'm responsible for the debates and the structures along with my colleague. And we are holding bi-weekly sessions just in case you're interested in debates, but you don't know where to start or you don't have any experiences whatsoever. Our job is to prepare you for the grand debate if you have the wish to participate afterwards. And my colleague is going to continue.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Maxim Logaszewski. I'm the second year PPE student as well. And as my colleague Medina mentioned, we have this preparatory sessions which are multi-style. We have Lincoln Douglas, we have Karl Popper, and also sometimes Oxford style. We'll see. And during them, you can prepare for our grand debate if you want to participate in that in the next one, which will be in mid-December, as Emily mentioned. Yeah, and do you want to add some?
Yeah, of course. Well, hello guys. My name is Lev, and I hope you're gonna enjoy the debate. I hope you're gonna enjoy the popcorn, and we're gonna be filming with the Karlovian, and later the debate, both your faces in the audience and the people sitting up front will be posted on our social media, so you can rewatch the experience, reflect on it maybe later on, and I hope you have a nice time.
Thank you, Lev. Nia Nanidze, one of the organizers of Debates Union, and I'm just very happy that you guys are all here. And I'm also very proud of the work we put in this because it's been a year after Debates Union was created. But we were fresh first years with no experience. And I think we gained a lot of experience during this year. And I think we're ready to host a grand debate and for more to come. And I'm just going to pass the microphone to Adrian, who's from Carlovian. Thank you.
Greetings, I'm here on behalf of the Carlovian. We will be recording this debate today and we will later publish it on YouTube for those who want to revisit it or for those who weren't able to join us today. We'd like to extend our thank you to the Debate Union. It's been a pleasure collaborating with them and we look forward to future partnerships. I would like to quickly take this time to talk about the Carlovian a bit for those who aren't familiar. We are a PPE-run news source, and we provide students the opportunity to publish their insights and thoughts about politics, philosophy, and economics, as well as beyond that. And even though it was founded in PPE, it is by no means exclusive to PPE students. In fact, all the Charles University students are welcome. And if you want to learn more about us, check out our social media or our website. And I'll give the mic to Carlos.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Carlos, president of the Carlovian, and I think a lot of things have been mentioned. But in general, we are very happy to have you here. We're very excited to hear and listen what you want to say. I think that's all about it. We are university students. It's about having a universal thought, collaborate, share everything that we think. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Guys, take your seats. All right, enough with the talking. Let's let our debaters speak. I would like you all to welcome our affirmative side on the should you kill a tyrant perspective. Guys, come in. All right, okay. And then I would like us to welcome our negative side, everyone. I'm going to let the debate speak for itself, but you guys are in for the ride, and I hope we all enjoy this day together. Yeah, let's get started.
So before we begin, we'll like to go over the rules once again, so you're also familiar with the procedure, and you may also judge the teams alongside with us. And I'll pass the microphone to Maxime.
Yeah, thank you very much, Medina. I'm co-chairing this debate, and I want to say a few words about how this all will be structured, because maybe some of you aren't unfamiliar with the style. First of all, we'll have opening remarks by both houses. Each speaker will have 3 minutes and 2 minutes, appropriately, 3, 2, 2. After that, we'll have a rebuttal for approximately 20 minutes, where each side will estimate and judge each other's arguments. After that, you, audience, will have chance to participate in the debate by asking questions, by raising points. It also will be like around 20 minutes. And after that, the most interesting side will have voting for who won the debate, and you will decide who did it. Here we'll have a QR code which you'll scan, and after that, the trust will be revealed. All right.
Right, and this is our Instagram QR codes if you want to check it out, check us out later. Quick shout out. Now we're gonna start with the debate. Our motion, should you kill a tyrant, which you're already familiar with. So I'd like to call the first affirmative speaker to start. Are you ready?
Thaddeus with affirmative. Aristotle knew that he who rules without law is not a king, but a tyrant. Equally, the Cambridge Dictionary defines a tyrant as a ruler using unlimited power over people unfairly and especially cruelly. Today, we're talking about a certain type of leader, a violent leader, someone that is torturing, murdering, and in cases, even committing genocide. And there is no other answer than the affirmative to this question. Today, and I want to be very clear with that, we're not talking about a leader simply using illiberal practices. We're not talking about someone here and there profiting of other people for their own benefits. We're talking about someone using systematic torture and violence. And historically, if there's going to be one consensus today, I hope this is going to be it. That historically, the people that were oppressed, the oppressed people would have been on the right side of history if they would have went against their oppressor. That the colonized people of the world, and I hope we all agree on that, would have been on the right side of history, confronting, removing, and finally killing the colonizer. We're not only talking about someone that uses cruel but mainly deadly reign over innocent people. And this brings me to the position side. Then because today, you will hear counter arguments against all of our case. You will hear that there are peaceful measures to remove a tyrant, that there are still peaceful measures to get rid of a leader that systematically abuses that power. But I urge you not to fall for this trick. I urge you to have in mind that as soon as there is a tyrant, considering that already established institutions, democratic institutions, failed at the point where we see a tyrant to reign over people, there is no other answer than to remove and kill the tyrant. And this is why considering the question, should you kill a tyrant, can only be answered with the affirmative. We're not talking about your everyday autocrat. We're not talking about every other dictator. We're talking about people that are ruling cruelly and violently against their own people. At this point, checks and balances, international checks and balances already failed. And I urge you not to be complicit with a tyrant. And I'm going to urge you not to be complicit with the tyrant being on the position, because killing the tyrant should be the first step to regain freedom, but the last step after losing it. Thank you.
Perfect timing. We'd like to follow with the second speaker, the first speaker of the negative team.
Kirilla Kozakevich of the negative teams. Thank you. So as been previously mentioned, there are going to be arguments made today that urge you to follow the way of consistently defending our democratic principles and trying to find a way, which, by the way, always exists, to pursue democratic, and not even democratic, but not a forceful removal of a dictator that has been established in one way or another, a democratic way or not. So our negative stance's main argument is that tyranny and tyrannicide, rather, is both ineffective and outdated practice. History shows that removing a tyrant from the country primarily serves as a cause of chaos in the country and spreads further violence that basically prevents democracy from establishing. But because a democracy by itself is an environment when things can be discussed peacefully. And if we are to preserve these democratic principles and to return the ways of democracy, we have to always seek to find these ways of removing dictator peacefully. Because for some cases, this violent solution of killing an individual who holds this much power, which also creates the vacuum of power, by the way, can lead to some situation that the person who was killing a dictator was not thinking about. For instance, we could also see this scenario unveiled with the execution of Saddam Hussein in 2006, when this was done after all of these forces in Iraq were already decimated. The only thing, by the way, that George W. Bush's administration succeeded in the war with Iraq was the spread of hatred towards the United States and the whole Western world amongst Muslim and Arab countries, but also creation of ISIS as a more radical answer of extremist settlement elements in these countries. But a primary goal of establishing a stable, long-lasting democracy in Iraq has failed, with the operation being named Freedom of Iraq. As you can see by this example, and similarly the example of execution of King Louis XVI of France, which served as a boiling point which caused 2/3 of France to rise up against the Republican government, promotes the idea that sometimes killing the dictator is not a primary way of doing things, and actually, in all of the cases, is not the best way of handling things, especially if you want to achieve a democratic country. Except for some cases, rather than, well, sometimes it feels appealing to kill a tyrant, it can only lead to the consequences that you hadn't predicted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to the second speaker of the affirmative team.
Hello, I'm Omar from the affirmative. While the question of tyrannicide is of violence, but that shouldn't deter us from engaging with it. It doesn't mean that violence is inherently bad, because why should we be subjected to the rules and laws of the oppressor? When they are the one monopolizing on violence, how can there be peaceful dissent? How can there be any peaceful democratic process? Because in my opinion, democracy is just a word after tyranny takes place. Those are all just words, because no direct action can actually take place, because it is far from the material reality of the people. If you're subjugated to enforced disappearances, a militarized rule, how can you protest? How can you tell somebody that, oh, the tyrant is actually bad? You can't. You're very far away from that reality. And eventually, I believe that the killing of a tyrant is a political necessity. It can become a public service as well, although it is not to be confused with bloodlust, where we just kill and kill. But it seeks to create a position where further reform can be created. And obviously, killing a tyrant may come with negative outcomes, but keeping a tyrant in power comes with worse outcomes, I believe. It's not about the exact establishing a utopia, but it's about the better net outcome. And I would also like to discuss that recently in my country, there's been an amendment passed which solidifies martial law through democratic means, actually, because it passed it through the parliament. But tyranny is very multifaceted. It's in structural powers. You can't just get rid of it through parliamentary means. You need to face it head on through material violence, through any sort of violence. And as Fanon said, against decolonization, that violence is a cleansing force. It helps man to regain his dignity. And unless that is achieved, we cannot move forward, as the tyrant will always be protected under democratic principles of international law. So I believe we need to take direct action in order to move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear second speaker of the affirmative house. The second speaker of the negative house, please present your arguments and maybe reply to those.
Yeah. Is it working? Yeah. I would like to talk about how tyrannicide, the idea of it being still an effective solution, is very outdated. In the modern international system, countries are larger, much more developed, and have much more resources comparatively. So they have more means to subdue populations under tyranny, especially with advanced military technology, surveillance methods, and propaganda on a larger scale. So for tyrannicide to be effective, the vast majority of the population has to be on board, willing and able to partake in the uprising, and also have the resources and the coordination to do so, which is much more difficult with a larger population and in larger countries. We chose the example of Alexander II, Tsar, in 1888. He was progressive comparatively. He had less censorship, he treated the Jewish population better, and he abolished serfdom. Some of the population had loyalty to him for this reason, because he was more progressive. So when he was assassinated, not everybody was on board with replacing the government. So his son, Alexander III, replaced him, as was even more tyrannical, and all of this effort just made the situation worse. Tyrannicide isn't effective it is just an emotionally appealing idea because it feels just, but it is way, way outdated. Thank you.
Thank you, dear second speaker of the negative house, and the third speaker of the affirmative house. Please present your further arguments and sum up of your.
This is Neil from the affirmative side. The question begins, should you kill a tyrant? But that undermines the real life situation of a person living in tyranny. Now, most of us living in this house right now, we live comfortable lives where the concept of tyranny is just theoretical. So for the rest of my speech, I would like you to imagine yourself in the shoes of someone living in a tyrannical society. So historically, a tyrant is only stopped if they're killed or if they're dead. If we talk about Hitler, Mussolini, we talk about Idi Amin, we talk about Gaddafi, the list can go on and on. The history is on our side. Let's, for example, take the example of Idi Amin, where after trying to invade Tanzania, he was exiled to Saudi Arabia, where he still continued to have a lot of sway in Ugandan politics, and that is why Uganda could not move on, could not develop. Now, the opposing house has mentioned that killing a tyrant is a very outdated thought, but I'd like to urge you and think. Talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, talk about Putin, talk about Min Wang Lang. They're all international criminals according to the ICC. However, they're still at large. How are they at large? Because countries refuse to cooperate, countries refuse to accept the Rome Statute. The amount of excuses can go on and on. Now, further expanding on my thought process, where you're living in a tyrannical society where art doesn't exist, culture doesn't exist, freedom of speech is limited, and you fear for your safety day in, day out, you have to think about it in a way where it's still a tall order for you to take that hypothetical gun and shoot. However, if you change the question without context to saying, should you be more courageous or should you be politically responsible, you would tend to agree. Most of the House would tend to agree. So summing up here, you should, in all honesty, kill the tyrant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear third speaker of the affirmative house, and the same mission goes to the third speaker of the negative house. Please present your further arguments.
I'd like to expand on my teammate's position that tyrannicide is an outdated, ineffective, and not really a truly effective way to bring about democratic means or end tyranny, if you will. Using an example from South Korea. From 1961 to 1989, South Korea was ruled by a military dictatorship. From 1961 to 1979, General Park was the ruler of South Korea. And during this time, very brutal regime, lack of freedom of press, unlawful arrests happened in this time period, and not a lot of democratic flourishing ideas was able to happen in this state. Meanwhile, and after 1979, he was assassinated. He was killed. A tyrant was actually killed by a member of the CIA during this time, KCIA. I should be specific. And after this happened, another general came to rule, General Chun. And this tyrant was able to solidify his power because the previous general was able to consolidate power using democratic means, using the rules that he passed through from the period of 1961 to 1979. So this is a perfect argument in history, which shows that killing a tyrant actually doesn't really change anything unless you focus and hammer on truly democratic movement. The reason why the latter, General Chun, was able to be overthrown was in 1988. Massive protests erupted in Korea, nationwide. 1 million students partook in this protest and was able to effectively end this regime. So, should we kill a tyrant? History says otherwise. History shows that through a democratic grassroots movement, we are able to seize the means of the government and actually deliver the end to tyranny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we are going to move on to the rebuttals. The affirmative team has the privilege to start. Your questions may not take more than 3 minutes, and the rebuttal round is not going to take no longer than 20 minutes. Who wishes to start?
Considering your house mentioned that killing tyrants is against democratic principles, how would you define first and foremost democratic principles being torn when the democracy is not present in the first place? The existence of tyranny is the antithesis of democracy.
Who wants to answer?
Well, thank you for the question. As been mentioned before, the democratic principles, which are not necessarily have to be followed by the law in this very country. As we all know, in Nazi Germany, for example, there were laws that protected the government, and yet there were still people trying to resist it. By liberal and democratic principles, I mean the general idea of people who are familiar with democracy as itself, willing to still resist and find solutions to bring the end of tyranny in peaceful ways, because the democracy itself is a way of peacefully resolving our disputes. And if we are to follow this path, we should avoid any violence, because any violence promotes the extreme ideas in the state, which prevents democracy from existing in the first place. So by democratic means and principles, we mean not the laws in this country, who may as well be 100% undemocratic, but I mean the principle and idea of people who are actually freedom-seeking, and not people who are a part of the regime, but just trying to overthrow it to gain power for themselves. Thank you.
Permission to follow up? Considering, first and foremost, do you accept that in a regime of tyranny, there will be violence, whether you are a victim of violence or you are the ones committing violence? And second of all, in that situation, when you are taking a non-violent approach, do you turn a blind eye towards all the violence that is being committed to your people, or would you rather be a part of that violence?
Also, a little point from us chairs, please, when joining the rebuttal, please not one person, but that all house participates. Yeah, who wants from the negative house?
The premise is, should you kill a tyrant? And the reason why you argue that killing a tyrant is effective is because it can mitigate harm, alleviate public pain, if you will. And as I've presented before, history shows otherwise, that killing tyrants actually alleviate public pain. We argue, as I'm going to reiterate again, that democratic grassroots movements, protests, mass protests, is what can topple down a regime. You do not have to kill a person, you do not have to kill a tyrant to be able to enact this level of change. So I hope that answers your question.
Permission to follow up? Well, I would also like to ask another question in response to this, that when the British colonized the subcontinent, it took us around 300 to 400 years to actually gain emancipation. However, a lot of people still stay to this day that, oh, we deserve to be colonized. But that is what colonization or tyranny or any form of oppression does to a person. They eventually are rid of their own dignity. They are waiting for that one democratic grassroots movement. But how can that be possible when it's far from their material reality, when they're stripped of their own rights? Should the colonized be waiting, or should they actually take up arms and engage in resistance? Why is it so demonized to earn back your own dignity? Why is it so wrong to do that on your own terms and not on the oppressors?
So if I understood your question correctly, whether people should agree with living in tyranny or take up arms and resist, we can follow this up with an example of civil war in Salvador, when people were indeed stripped out of their dignity and sense of freedom. But by restoring freedom and their will and their belief in democratic principles, we should pursue these measures peacefully. If we are encouraging violence, either by establishing dictatorship or ending it, we are not bringing democracy any way close. And you also mentioned earlier, I believe, the follow-up question that people should just sit and watch. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that people should be agreed in living in a autocratic or totalitarian state. but rather it means that their resistance should be not peaceful, but rational. If you are killing a dictator, you're creating a huge vacuum of power, and it doesn't really cohere with what is going to happen afterwards. The killing of the dictator in some countries, like in Caribbean region or Latin America, demonstrate that usually the ones that actually kill the dictator are people who served under this dictator before, and they're instead establishing the same dictator from the surrounding circle of the previous one who's been killed. So even if we do commit to such things, we could still end up with an authoritarian state. Thank you.
Permission to follow up? So taking that into account, I believe there's a far broader variety to the historic side you just mentioned than the one you were talking about. Don't you disagree that there is, or do you agree with me that there is far more to the story than only these two mentioned causes, and there are currently a lot of people living under tyranny, and by stating that in two cases killing a tyrant wasn't as effective as it was portrayed, aren't you negating the realities of the lives of people currently living under that tyranny?
I think the question is to kill a tyrant, not necessarily no violence at all. In fact, violent protest has been proven to be much more effective than killing a singular person. So for all the people under tyranny right now in the world, it's not disregarding their experience. We should be advocating for actually effective and better international law and more coordinated, more productive forms of action than just assassinating a singular person and expecting an entire system of tyranny to just fall with that one person, which is unlikely and does not always happen. So why take a life when it's not promising very likely success?
Permission to follow up?
Yeah, definitely, Mr. Side.
Considering that most tyrants live in systems where the tyrant himself, the individual, holds the most power, and also considering that your house also mentioned that they wanted to take grassroots approach towards maybe more education or changing the beliefs of the populace. Would you not agree with me in the sentiment that first and foremost that would not be possible because of the tyrant and their tyrannical methods of subduing all of that as backed by history? And furthermore, how would you try and change the way that the people believe that they should not have rights, or they have been subdued and they've been brainwashed by the tyrants and the tyrannical regime? How do you change that mindset when the tyrant himself is actively trying to stop it if you don't kill them?
As I've mentioned before, in South Korea, again, I will reiterate this again. Democratic protests did happen under tyranny, under a tyrant. They did kill people. 165 people were dead under the Gwangju massacre. So people did die. But this did not stop the people of South Korea to not take arms, sorry, but to protest against tyranny, to protest against this specific tyrant. And they actually won. They actually was able to pass constitutional reforms to remove this guy from power. This guy conceded. The general who was in power conceded. I would like to also add another example in Indonesia, where in 1998, the president at the time, Suharto, stepped down because massive protests erupted at the House of Representatives. Riots happened, many people dead, but they did not kill our president. Sorry, not our president. They did not kill the president at the time. So when you use the argument of history is on your side, I think that's just factually inaccurate, where there are many, many different instances in history, where you take Indonesia, where you take South Korea, where mass movements by the people were able to actually effectively challenge tyranny and challenge the tyrant who's in power. Because the premise of your argument is, should you kill a tyrant, is to remove and alleviate all the pain and suffering the tyrant is causing. And killing the tyrant is just simply ineffective, as we've discussed before. I hope that answers your question.
As I understood your question, you're saying that, and you mentioned that 165 people died. Although those 165 people died, but are they worth less than that one life that has caused this systemic oppression? And when we talk about killing a tyrant, your house has often stated that the death of the tyrant is not the end of tyranny, and I agree with that. We have to uproot those ideas, but the tyrant is the center, it is the axis of those ideas. And unless you can get rid of the proponent of the certain ideologies, you will not get rid of tyranny itself. It's not that as if Hitler wouldn't be born, fascism wouldn't exist. Obviously, it would. It would just take another form. But you have to you have to you have to engage in political violence. It is a necessity because sitting around and speaking words does not help. And I can quote an example of my country. As I said before, they passed an amendment which gives certain army ranked officers immunity. And we may not be living in a tyrannical state right now, but from years to come, we may be under martial law. And now is the time to rise up through political violence, because unless we do, then we'll be subjugated to the tyrant's values, and armed violence isn't possible anymore. And that's how history has always been. People don't rise up in time. People wait for this democratic movement. And honestly, I feel like these are just words at the hands of tyranny. Because when you talk to people in Kashmir and Palestine, are you going to engage in theory with them, or are you going to engage in practice with them?
Dear second speaker of the affirmative side, can you please specify from which country are you? Because you mentioned example.
Pakistan.
Okay, Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've mentioned that the political violence is a necessity in such cases, right? So do you agree with me that by encouraging political violence and the means of forcefully dismantling dictatorship, you are preparing society for a next dictatorship and basically allowing violence to take place, basically legally, by claiming that it is by law affordable if you're in a situation like this, that you're preparing a citizenship for this country for further dictatorship, while trying to persuade peaceful, not even peaceful, but not so violent and not so rational, importantly, ways of dismantling dictatorships. You're actually providing people with experience and knowledge of democratic and liberal principles, by which you're also bringing the country closer to democracy itself. Even in the cases of people, unfortunately, getting completely brainwashed and their mindsets replaced from these democratic sentiments for their, for example, paternal ones. And allow me to also mention, I believe that you mentioned Russia as Putin specifically as one of the examples of the tyrants that are still right now making people suffer, and you're completely correct. But if we are to take action, and by this to only kill one person, not bring the entire dictatorship down, but one person, do we actually making any steps any closer to ending this war in particular? Because if we kill, supposedly, Putin right now, first of all, it's probably not going to be us. It's going to be one of the establishment or people that are powerful enough to do this. Most likely out of this personal circle of Putin himself, there's going to be exact same policy, with some changes, potentially personal changes. But the war is not over by that necessarily. It can be a more radical person who actually pushes the button and instigates the war and escalates it. Or it can be a less radical person, but it doesn't bring democracy to Russia. For instance, the killing of one person itself doesn't change anything. Thank you.
This house has mentioned quite a few times during our speeches as well that killing the tyrant himself is not the only answer. It's not the full stop. It's not the period of you're done shooting the gun and that's it. Your country is now like transformed. It's a step towards democracy. It's a step towards gaining back your freedom. And furthermore, according to my example of Putin has remained at large, and Putin has remained, even though he's an international criminal and he has arrest warrants, because countries do not, country like Russia does not accept the Rome Statute, does not accept ICC's rulings. Now, that might be the example for Russia, but countries will always find leeways and they will find loopholes as to whether they must escape responsibility. That is the role of a tyrant, to escape responsibility. And the question is not, should anyone kill a tyrant? The question is, should you kill a tyrant? For you to kill a tyrant, you need to be living in a tyrannical society where you are the one oppressed. So the question is an individualistic question of whether you have the moral responsibility, whether you have the actual foundational responsibility to take up that gun and shoot the tyrant. That's not the end. That's not the end result. The seeds of tyranny has been already planted by the tyrant. You need to uproot that tree once it grows up, and you need to reform itself. So it's not an answer of whether, okay, once we kill the tyrant, it's done. No, killing the tyrant is the first step. Without killing, it's not essential to not kill the tyrant. It's not going to work that way, because the tyrant has that power over you, because it's an individualistic question of that tyrant rules over you. You do not have the power to make that change unless you kill the tyrant.
I would like to bring up that killing a tyrant, if you're not a close associate or some other powerful and power-interested person, is just about as difficult as leading a grassroots movement under tyranny. You need resources and so much coordination and probably attempts to actually successfully assassinate a tyrant, and the risk of what would happen if a grassroots movement, if local people were caught and failed to murder a tyrant, would be devastating. It would worsen the circumstances so much more. So why choose tyrannicide? Why choose killing a tyrant instead of other violent forms of protest, or really any other way, even if it's violent, even if it's extreme? It's just not a very effective solution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There are 3 minutes remaining of the rebuttal. Please, 3 minutes remaining for the whole rebuttal. Therefore, yeah.
Considering that you have mentioned that there can be violent and extremist ways to, let's say, subjugate or subdue a tyrant, and tyrannicide is not the answer. Well, first and foremost, assassination attempts have been a thing and has done a lot of reform. We can consider the example of Ceausescu in Romania, where he was tried to be assassinated multiple times, which actually did lead up to his trial and then his subsequent capital punishment. Furthermore, we also need to understand that it's not a question of logistics where you have to figure out or you have to make a master ploy of whether you need to kill a tyrant, but rather whether it's your moral responsibility to kill that tyrant if you're living in a tyrannical society.
Yes. So thank you for asking and promoting this question. I believe that you have mentioned Ceausescu as an example where the dictator was killed and the tyranny of the Communist Romanian Party was ended. So allow me to argue that after Ceausescu with his wife was killed during the trial, which wasn't democratic in any terms, by the way, it was just made really quickly to claim the ones responsible for the whole regime, which weren't, by the way, only Ceausescu and his wife, obviously responsible. And after this trial, after Ceausescu and his wife were killed, executed, those who've been in power in Romania have been same people serving under Ceausescu and basically slowed down Romanian transformation into a democratic state. Whilst in other countries, yes, protests were not violent, and it brought to power to those people who were actually opposing the dictatorship in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both houses. The rebuttal round is over, and now we have 15 more minutes. If the audience wish to ask questions for the debaters for either houses, you'll be provided with microphones, so feel free. Could we have one of the members of the organizing committee pass the microphones?
Yeah. Also, just a note for the debate for audience, you can ask a question not to some certain debater, but to the whole house, and also the house to which the house to which the question is not addressed can also address this question as a rebuttal to the answer of their opposing team.
Hello, can I ask two questions?
You have 2 minutes.
Can I ask two questions for each of the teams? All right. Question to the opposition of killing. Do you agree that an international tribunal or a local tribunal following due process can sentence a tyrant to death? So that's the question for the anti-killing of tyrant, and the position is history has showed that peaceful protests are more effective than violent ones in toppling regimes and making changes. And the question is, the use of violence that some of your team members use, literally pulling up a gun and shooting the tyrant, isn't undermining the legitimacy of the protest movement? Thank you.
Yeah, first in negative house.
If due process is followed, if they violated laws, if they are a criminal, basically, then yes. Like any criminal that is under any state will be charged and would be sentenced to capital punishment, yes, we agree. Because then there will be a legitimate justification for the murder or the killing of that certain tyrant. But if we just pull up a gun and just shoot the person in the head, there's no legitimate justification for that. So yes, with due process, that's a lot.
Affirmative house?
Okay, if I understood it wrong, if I understood it right, as I hopefully did, you said that peaceful protest historically has been more effective. So first of all, we're talking about peaceful protest, which means in a tyranny, and the very gist of this question is a tyrant ruling over the people. There is no way to peaceful protest if we are already living in such a system. And taking the lives of the people there into account, it's not only not possible, but people will receive severe punishment. And second of all, where we can talk only about so few historic examples, but much more historic examples that are still suffering under oppression, under tyranny, that did not find the courage to kill their oppressor, to kill their tyrant. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll be taking the second question. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question to the negative house. You have stated that the more or less peaceful opposition within the spirit of liberal democracy is the preferable way. And well, let's talk about real world examples. Russia, Putin. How should we, or maybe should Russians, solve this issue of tyranny in Russia? Because it's spilling over into other countries, namely Ukraine. Thank you.
Is the question clear? You may proceed.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. A really important one, speaking of. So, if we are to consider Ukrainian killing a Russian president, this could serve as a further justification for Russian war against Ukraine and actually make the situation even worse. If we're talking about Russian committing tyrannicide and killing Putin, as I mentioned before, what proof do we have that this will start the war by itself? And certainly, the death of Putin will not put any democratic candidate with the removal of the system itself. So by removing only one person who is indeed in charge of the state, we are not giving any guarantee that Russia will be democratic. People of Russia should persist democratic institutions themselves and further follow this way of protesting, either violently or not violently. If they fail to do so, it doesn't necessarily mean that killing a dictator either for them or especially for Ukrainians is a right way to do. Because Ukraine is also, by the way, has a risk that this will follow up even worse situation for them. Because as I mentioned, this can be a further justification against Ukrainians because they killed our great president. We should reply. Thank you.
And we'd like to move on with the third question.
Hello. I have three questions. My first question for the whole groups. How can we measure tyranny? Because it is a huge problem. Because you're, especially the first team, you said about the illiberal democracy, and after that they replied about the democratic values. How we gonna measure about that in Western-centric approach or other else? Because there is no exact way to measure tyranny and the liberal democratic values. Is that universal? How can be universal? I mean, everyone has a different culture, different administration style. Can we say Xi Jinping is a dictator? We are not Chinese, so I can't. My second question is basically towards to the affirmative side. You mentioned about the colonization. I suppose you are from Pakistan, right? Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Is that who do you think colonized the British regime in general? George III, Queen Victoria, or wealth accumulation of the capitalism? And my third question is, again, if we can decide who is tyrant, how we gonna kill its legitimacy? For example, 40% of the people voted for the Hitler, and probably they are going to vote for another Hitler if it is not gonna be Hitler. So should we kill 40% of the German? Thank you.
I would like to clarify the question, because questions too. How do you define a tyrant? From which perspective? And the second question is to the affirmative house regarding their country's colonization, regarding which monarch was responsible for it. I'd like to start with the affirmative house first, because the negative house was answering the previous question. Affirmative house wish to answer the first question?
I'll answer for the first point. Omer can go for the second one. Understanding this is very critical. There are definitions of a tyrant. There are definitions by Oxford, there are definitions by Cambridge, but there are theoretical definitions. They are not real life definitions. They're not real life definitions. Like, theoretically speaking, a lot of things may seem black and white, but when you go there out in real life, you would see the world is way more gray in general. You don't need to be a North Korean to understand that Kim Jong-un is a dictator, okay? The same way we need to understand that not every person qualifies as a tyrant. If you don't agree with a person's political views, but they have been elected democratically, you can't just call them a tyrant. It is just not simple like that. In fact, in history, the amount of tyrants are like compared to like authoritarian rulers are quite small. There can be authoritarian rulers who are not tyrants. And we have clarified on that. Secondly, you need to understand that no, you don't just kill 40% of the German population because they voted for Hitler. It doesn't work that way. Tyrants can come in power in various ways. They can do a coup d'etat, they can come through force, or they can be elected. But that is an election, that made Hitler come into power. That was an election. But a tyrant has that power to turn a democratic state into an undemocratic state where the tyrant only is in power. So it is a very gray area on whether you decide to call someone a tyrant, but there is an objective way of looking at it. You can look at it theoretically, but you can also look at it in a way that's relevant to the real world.
We're moving on with the negative house first.
When we were developing our arguments for this, we sort of decided to look at it through the domestic lens because we thought looking at it in a more complex way would make it too complicated and stray us from the question. So we just assumed when we came up with everything that this person was a tyrant and they were deemed a tyrant by their people. We didn't really incorporate an international relations perspective of other countries defining it and the Western versus the non-Western, because we felt that that would stray our arguments too far from the question, and it would be more so about defining tyranny than about whether you should kill a tyrant. So sorry, we don't have a specific answer for that because we just couldn't really find a way to fit it within like 6 minutes. So yeah, thank you.
One more minute. Okay. Yes, I would also like to address the argument about coming of Hitler to power as been presented by the affirmative House. As we all know, between the end of the First World War and coming of Hitler to power, there was a period of Weimar Republic when there was introduced a really liberal and democratic constitution. But the problem is, how do you define exactly what comes, why Hitler came to power, for instance? Was it because of the Hitler itself? Because of the promises he made? Yes. But it mainly was because German democratic principles, their institutions, were not developed enough for people to actually believe in them. People were seeking some easy solutions, just as following Hitler's argumentation that he is going to win the war and avenge all of the atrocities that were happening to Germany. And bringing up another argument is that by defining who is a tyrant, I can say that, for example, right-wing people in Chile at the time found Salvador Allende a tyrant, but he was not, and yet he was killed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do we have some more questions?
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. The affirmative team has to answer the second question, and we'll be moving on with you.
As per your question regarding why the British colonized us, I assume that was your question. And who was the actual colonizer? Like whether it was due to capitalism, whether there was some monarch. I believe it is accumulation of all these factors. But then again, if the British were to follow democratic principles, they did not recognize our colonization as something wrong. They were fed the propaganda that it's their right. It's their right to steal us of our land, our labor, our hard work. It is to strip us of our dignity because we were seen as second-class citizens in our own land. And thus, if we follow democratic principles, we may have argued in courts that, oh, well, there's something being wrong done to us. But the British would never accept that. And even their own people, it only took us to revolt against them that they left us. And it was actually due to losses in World War II that they actually left us, or else I believe they didn't really have any powerful interest to leave us alone. So I don't think we can exactly rely on democratic principles all the time. Like if you take the example of America contemporarily as well, although it may be democratic, but would you want to go there right now as a brown person? Don't you think that people in universities are scared right now? So how can we convince ourselves again and again that we need to wait for that democratic movement to appear and that certain countries may have a better rule of law and better institutions, but even then the law can be coerced because at the end of the day it is a piece of paper, as many tyrants say, and most of the times they don't even follow it themselves.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on with the question.
Okay, I have two questions. One of them is quick for both teams. I would like to know on paper what you are defining as a tyrant. Second question is more so asking for a clarification from the negative team. I recall a statement from this team that was basically somewhere along the lines, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. It was somewhere along the lines of killing a tyrant and reaching organization to kill a tyrant is hard, but making a democratic grassroots movement is hard. So basically they should just cope. So I would like to know, and I state again, to you, how many people should die in order to take action, and what action to you has proven to be effective in order to make any change?
Thank you very much for your question. We'll be starting with the negative House.
We're trying to say that the resources that we pull in killing a tyrant versus organizing a mass movement is almost similar. Because like to kill a tyrant, you have to get through their bodyguards. You have to know the logistics of this tyrant. You have to understand what time he goes to the toilet. You have to understand where he is at a certain time, right? So there's so much resources pulled to do that one thing. Meanwhile, you can actually organize millions of people or tens of thousands of people to actually develop a mass protest, a mass movement to make sure that every single person in their respective country is able to fight against the tyrant or fight against the tyranny, to make their voices heard. And of course, yeah, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that clarifies your worries.
Yes. about defining who is a tyrant. So we cannot just say that there is a universal law defining who the tyrant is, or similarly, we can say that we are defining by country who is a tyrant. A tyrant may be in Chile, but he might not be, a ruler of Brazil might not be a tyrant. No. By this, we mean we recognize as tyrant any person who, by tyrannical means, by forceful means, or actually by democratic means, has secured power. And not only this, because this is an ancient Greek formulation of a word tyrant, but a tyrant is a person who has brought his or her country to a demise, to the poverty, and executed a lot of decisions that worsened the living standards of the people in this country, but while similarly raising these various standards and making the power, those who are in power are more powerful and more secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Negative House speaker. After Affirmative House answers their question, we'll have one more last question. Yeah, and after that, we'll have voting, please.
Okay, so what is tyranny? As I said at the beginning, I want to make clear that there are two main distinctions we're going to make. First of all, it's the experience of the people living under tyranny, the people oppressed, the people suffering under the tyrant. And second of all, it's the preconditions that constitute this form of government, if you want to call it that way. First of all, the experience of the people. For there to be a tyrant, for a tyrant to actually be a tyrant, there must be violent misuse of power, of unlimited power, as Cambridge states it, in an unfairly and cruel way, which means we're talking about torturing, we're talking about murdering, and in cases even committing genocide. And second of all, if there is tyranny, we can all agree upon that in that case, all institutions, state institutions, democratic institutions that were in place before are not effective anymore. And that's why I believe the position is shying away from a clear definition, because if you would be to define tyranny very clearly, you would come to the conclusion that killing the tyrant is the only option.
Due to the high demand that we received from a few more people, we're going to extend the number of questions, but would like to ask you to ask them more briefly and more concisely, and the debaters will have less time to answer because of the time constraint. So we'll be moving on with the questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll collect
Hello.
questions,
Hello.
and after that, each house will answer.
Is this on? Okay. Hello. I have two questions. For the affirmative, I would like to know, what if a significant portion of the population, maybe even the majority of it, supports the tyrant? Does that make it any
I'm so sorry. Could you please bring your microphone closer? It's
What
not
is this?
coherent.
What am I speaking into? I don't.
Can you try both of them? You're not
Hello.
coherent enough.
Hi. Okay, yeah, so what if the tyrant has a lot of support in the population? Like Emperor Hirohito, he was very popular well into the war. Adolf Hitler, very popular even after the war in the 1950s. A lot of people said he had great ideas that were executed poorly, was the quote. That was polling information says this. So does it make it any more or less valid to kill a tyrant if they have a lot of support? And how many people have to be suffering for it to count as too great a cost for the public opinion, if that makes sense? And for the negative, you've talked a lot about the practical. You said it practically doesn't work to kill a tyrant. Do you have any moral qualms with it? Do you think maybe morally it's okay to kill a tyrant, but practically it's not? And if so, you know, to what extent does that? To what extent do your beliefs matter if you don't believe in using action to justify your beliefs? And then one last tiny thing, Abro, you look so handsome. You look so handsome in that suit. Will you marry me? Will you marry me? Thank you.
Yeah, let's collect from two more people, and after that, each house will have time to reply to those questions. Who wishes?
Could we get a microphone over here? Okay.
Hello. Thank you so much for your speeches. I would like to ask, if we justify killing a tyrant today, how can we stop future generations from killing an elected leader of future? And can you put it down in the simplest terms? Thank you so much.
Yeah, and here is person in glasses, please. Okay, if everyone hears, no, we have a special microphone. Yeah, for the video. I'm sorry. Me? Okay. So, is the position of teams completely consolidated, or are those like 6 different positions of each person individually? So what I'm saying, I believe there is a certain contradiction in the position of anti-killing tyrant. May I ask the specifying question for that? You mean, what do you mean by specifying question? Kirilla mentioned that any use of violence is inherently undemocratic and is not going to work because it is inefficient. Is it so? Is it your position or no?
I had to specify. Yes, I had to specify any use of violence which is not through democratic means and law, because any unprocessed way of violence brings the introduction of this violence into legal life, and thus brings a state to a more authoritarian stage. Thank you.
Good. So your colleague has said that killing tyrant is not enough because it's just going to create a power vacuum. However, I believe you've said something about using violence as a part of this grassroots democratic process is okay, as a part of it, defending it. Is that so?
I'm so sorry. Could you just ask your question because we're running out of time? So are you saying that there's a contradiction within the negative house?
Yes.
Okay,
because
they're going to answer that later on. We heard your points, and we're going to ask the rest. Very, very last question. Very, very last question.
There was hand before.
I'll be short and concise. The question is for the 4 team, and as I would assume you would agree with me that Trump is a tyrant of the current U.S. government. Now the question is, would you agree that killing Trump does not remove tyranny? Because, for example, by the U.S. law, Trump would supposed to be replaced by his vice president, who is, I think, J.D. Vance, if I'm not being correct. And if anything, assassination of Trump, actually, the attempt of assassination of Trump, it made him more powerful and gave him the fuel of hatred towards the common enemy within the right-wing spaces. Do you think that this political violence actually is helping them rather than hurting them?
Thank you very much. We'll be starting with the affirmative house. So
Yeah, and since there are many questions, let's do for each house 3 minutes.
yes, 3 minutes per house. Whoever wishes to start.
Thank you for the compliment, Joshua, by the way. You said something about how a tyrant can have a significant portion of the population supporting them. Now, to sum it up very well, we need to first understand that, number one, a tyrant is someone who exceeds unlimited cruelty to their populace and also does not have any responsibility for the same. Now, you would also understand that, history also approves of this, that most tyrants are actually quite enigmatic people. Hitler was an enigmatic person. Hirohito was an enigmatic person. People followed him. That is a big problem, and that is why we're forcing towards the cause that we should kill a tyrant, because the amount of power they hold, not only with their actions, but also with their voice, in brainwashing people, in making people believe that they do not have fundamental human rights. That is a major cause of concern, and that is why you should take up a gun and shoot the tyrant.
Okay, concerning the second question, whether pretty much the digging down on the first question, whether a tyrant can also be democratically elected. And yes, we believe a tyrant can be democratically elected. Talking about Hitler, I'm not sure whether anyone in this room would agree that killing Hitler would have been morally wrong. Concerning that point, I'd say yes. We always have to take the lives of the people under the tyrant into account in stating whether a tyrant is actually a tyrant based on the definition I gave earlier.
On the third question on killing Trump, although I do believe yes, any assassination attempts creates a vacuum where the people are more riled up, but I also believe that's going to happen either way, that if you kill him or if you don't kill him, because now more than ever there are still Trump supporters and they're still very much red pilled, I would say. And obviously, yeah, killing him did not exactly, or like an attempt to kill him did not exactly help the Democrats. But I would also argue that that's why we also raise a question of like, it's not that we just kill the tyrant and stop. We have to uproot these ideas, because tyranny is also a form of violence itself. It rejects a lot of other people. It rejects marginalized people, especially. So, of course, we shouldn't just stop. Like, if Trump was dead, I don't think anybody would be sad. But personally, we should then start with uprooting his ideals, his his goals and visions. I would say it's not that we should like stop from a fear of a vacuum of from sorry. We should stop to kill because there may be a vacuum of power, but we should then further our goals. Thank you.
Are you ready?
So maybe what I said was unclear, but the affirmative is very much saying that violence is needed to overthrow tyrant, and they need to be killed. I don't think it's the case. I don't think violence is needed, but I was saying, I was trying to ask them why killing a tyrant, and why, if you must use violence, why not less violent things? Why not things that wouldn't involve taking a life? Or why not more effective things that involve violence? So it was more so me trying to ask them specifically, like, why they're defending this tyrannicide, if that's clear to you. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, I would like to go under the question of Mr. Joshua. Yes, so about our moral stance of committing tyrannicide. Obviously, it seems appealing to kill a person responsible for so many deaths. And I believe that despite any of your religions, you may feel something that urges you to follow this path, to take a life, but to also kill a person who holds so much power that disrupting it so radically can lead to even more atrocities. What grant do you have that if you kill a tyrant or a dictator who holds so much power, the result is going to be worse? We have multiple examples when a tyrant was deposed or killed or just died out, and because democratic institutions were not developed and there was no any steps taken towards a peaceful resolution, when this dictatorship was reposed by even more violent one. So this is our stance. We do not think taking a life is moral, but we also think that committing to it, to taking a life of a dictator, is not moral, not committing to the killing of a tyrant is moral, because by this you are protecting a lot of people who are up to risk to being killed or harmed by your possible act. And then again, is it not cases where it is you who commits this act, tyrannicide? It usually leads to harm to the opposition, because to replace a regime is you have to do way more just to kill one person. Thank you.
You have 20 more seconds.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is the end of Q&A where audience is involved, and now there is point X, so to speak. Now will be the voting. Many strong points were raised on both houses, and it's for you now time to decide who won this, whose arguments outweighed others.
And before I show you the QR code, before we selected our debaters, we asked them to select a song that they associate with the topic. And most of them chose Bella Ciao. So we're going to play that while you vote.
Sono stato ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 una mattina sono stato partigiano da via. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao.
Okay, are you guys prepared for the results? Debaters? Can we have some drum rolls? Okay. 3, 2, 1. The affirmative house, congratulations!
Yeah, the affirmative side.
And could we get everyone's 2 more minutes for the winners to say a few words?
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It can be that close, how people want to kill or not kill. And I thought it was a really fun debate. We had a great time preparing for the debate. I'm really glad this debate could happen that way. And such a close result also draws a picture why we should have more of those debates.
Also, thank you again, like practically speaking, staying like till 3:30 in campus and attending the debates. We're really happy with the turnout, really happy that you guys answered the questions that you guys did ask. And I would urge the debate union to do more of these and to collaborate and make this a regular thing.
Yes, thank you. Can we just also get a round of applause for our negative house as well? You did an amazing job. Thank you, thank you. Briefly, on a personal note here, I was just going to say that one of the reasons why we decided to co-found this club and lead this is because we are PPE, we like to stay on top, yet we didn't see much clubs that actually dealt within our field of studies, and we didn't have much space to engage into respectful, inspiring, and political discourse. So this is what we aim to do with the PPE Debate Union. Join us. This club is for you. We have multi-style debates every even Wednesday at 12:30 here in Ioannitsa campus in the FSV UK room 117, if I'm not mistaken. And we will have debates like these 2 times per academic semester. This was our first time. I hope you enjoyed. I can't wait to talk to you all later, and thank you so much for coming here. It really made all of the work we put in last year now make sense. Thank you.